بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Um, okay. So it says a sunnah act of hajj. So as we know, we broke down hajj into three categories, or the act of hajj, either it's fard, you have to do it, and if you don't do it, there's simply no hajj. There's wajib, you have to do it, and you're sinful if you don't do it, but they still have a hajj if you don't do it. And then there's sunnahs. He says the sunnahs include all acts which should be done, but are not included in the arkan, the essential ones, or the wajibat. Says whoever misses a rukn, if you miss an essential part of hajj, his hajj will not be valid and is not permitted for him to leave the state of ihram until he does it, right? So for example, you entered ihram and you missed Arafah, right? Arafah is time sensitive. It starts on the day before Eid at Dhuhr and it ends at the day of Eid at Fajr. So you missed it for whatever reason, intentional, unintentional. Your Hajj does not count and you cannot leave Ihram until you complete Hajj or Umrah. So what happens is you're going to shift your Hajj into an Umrah and complete your Umrah and then come back next year and do your Hajj, right? If you don't, the other ones are not time sensitive. Let's say, for example, I went on Hajj and then a year later, someone's like, oh, mashallah, you have really long hair. You know, when you go on Hajj, I guess you can cut it. I said, no, actually, I went on Hajj last year. They said, oh, did you cut your hair? I think, no. Did you trim your hair? I say, no. Okay, that's an rukun, that's an integral of Hajj. When you go on Hajj, you have to trim or shorten your hair. That's an essential thing. So that means that when you didn't do that, you were in ihram the whole time. You've been in ihram since last year when you did Hajj, right? That means you've been doing things in this state that you can't do. So there's a big problem. Um, so anyway, so it's a ihram means entering a sacred state. You can't leave that sacred state until it's finished. An atonement payment, a fidya of the penalty known as dam, known as blood, will not make up for it. So with the wajib, you miss certain things. You can slaughter a sheep in its place. You can fast in its place. There's various different things you can do. But for a rukn, for an essential part of Hajj, there's nothing you can do. You cannot compensate for it. Nor can another do it for one. Three of the arkan will always be binding as long as the person performing the Hajj is alive. They are the tawaf, so from midnight of the day before Eid, the time comes in for your tawaf, for your sa'i, and for the shaving of your head. If you don't do them, they just become the time comes in and the time never exits. So you could do it that day, you can do it the day after Eid, the day after the Eid, a month after Eid, a year after Eid, a decade after Eid, right? But you still have to do it at some point. Whoever misses out a wajib, his Hajj is accepted, it's valid. So accepted is not the right translation here. Accepted is something else. You might do every single thing, but Allah doesn't accept it, right? Or you might miss something out and Allah accepts it as something else. Acceptance is something else. Here we say meaning is valid. Your Hajj is valid, but he has to pay a dam penalty. He has to sacrifice or fast, etc. So you miss something out of that list. You say, we're not going through the expiations here. So you need to go study that in the next class. Oh, what are the expiations? He will be in a state of sin if he missed it without an excuse. So you might miss it with an excuse, might not miss it without excuse. You know, for example, you know, you had an injury. You had an injury and um, you had an injury and what's it called? You have to shave, you have to remove some hair or remove a nail, right? So you can't cut your nails, you can't cut your hair in ihram. But here he had an excuse, right? So the excuse sometimes means that there's nothing to do. Sometimes it does. Sometimes, depending on different kind of things that are haram and ihram, sometimes you might be overlooked, sometimes not. So we need to study that in a more high level class. But the point is, in general, these wajibat, you have to do them. And if you don't do them, you're by default sinful. And if you don't do them, you have to expiate. You have to do something. You have to fast. You have to slaughter a sheep. You have to pay charity, something to compensate. But whoever misses out a sunnah, his hajj is valid, right? And is not in a state of sin and does not have to pay anything, right? Although he's missed out on a great deal of blessing, right? So, for example, it's obligatory to remove some hair, and for men, it's sunnah to shave. So you spent I don't know how much money and time going on hajj, this once in a lifetime thing, and you couldn't be bothered to shave your head because thought it would be you'd look funny, right? That's not. It's kind of weird. Right? Like it's okay to look funny for Allah, you know, like Allah's worth it. Um, it is not permitted for a man to cover his head or for a woman to cover her face while in the state of ihram. And there's other things as well. Um, so a man cannot wear a hat, can't wear a turban, can't put something over his head while he's sleeping. He can put an umbrella over his head. He can carry something on his head like his bag or something else. They're not permitted to cover any part of them, nor are they, male or female, permitted to cut their nails or their hair or put oil on the hair of their head or beard, or to wear perfume on any of the body. You're not permitted to perform the marriage ceremony or to have sexual intercourse or acts which lead to it. So when you're in ihram, all of these things are haram. Or to harm any animal, whether domesticated or wild. I'm not quite sure why it says domesticated or wild. Cannot harm any animal, whether domesticated or wild. It's a bit interesting. So the issue is basically there's two things. When you're in ihram, you're in this sacred state. You cannot hunt land animals. Okay? That's number one. Number two, when you're in this sacred state, when you're in that sacred place, whether or not you're in that sacred state, you cannot hunt land animals. So imagine, for example, in the old days, you come outside of the Kaaba, you walk for a mile and you see a gazelle. You're like, oh, I'm going to go and hunt that gazelle. You cannot, right? You're in that sacred place, right? You can't cut down trees. You're in that sacred place. So the sacred place, you cannot hunt animals or cut down trees in that sacred place. And in that sacred state, even if you're far away, once you've entered ihram, you cannot hunt wild edible animals. Here it says whether domesticated or wild, I'm not quite sure. It sounds a little bit odd here. I mean, if you want ihram, can you kill a chicken that's with you to eat? Like you're traveling with a bunch of chickens. You're traveling with cattle that you want to eat. You want to buy a sheep on the way and eat it. Like, yeah. So I'm not quite sure. It's something off with the translation, perhaps. The woman and the man are the same in regards to these prohibitions. The only difference is dress, right? So women have to cover everything apart from the face and hands as normal, and they just can't cover their face. And men have to wear different kind of clothes. So women can kind of wear any kind of clothes, whereas men cannot cover their head and cannot wear clothes that surround their body by being sewn, right? So they have to wear basically towels, right? That's the effective thing there. Okay, that's the upshot of these first two sections. So we've covered the section of Iman, and can cover the section of Islam. So let's summarize again. What is Iman? Iman is knowing and accepting the reality of Islam. I know and accept that Allah exists, that Prophet ﷺ is his prophet, that I have to follow him, that I'm going to die, that I'm going to go to the grave, that I'm going to come out of the grave, judgment day, etc. Right? That is Iman, to know it and to accept it. So what's the opposite of knowing? Doubting or being confident, right? If you're merely confident in Islam, that's not Iman, right? Or you know it, but you don't accept it, right? There's no what's called idhan, you don't accept it. So yeah, that's a state of kufr. Okay, so that's the opposite of Iman. And then Islam, the things that we do, right? As Imam al-Laqani says, وَالْإِسْلَامَ اشْرَحَنَّ بِالْعَمَلِ, right? So what I was going to say was is these things that you do. So do this and don't do this, right? This is the realm of fiqh. So we looked at 5 sections of fiqh, but there's many sections of fiqh, right? We talk about transactions, we talk about marriage, we talk about penal law, we talk about government, we talk about all sorts of things, right? Most of what we talk about has nothing to do with worship, right? In fiqh. And now we're going on to the realm of ihsan, right? The realm of ihsan, which is how you are internally, right? And so the first one is easy. It's simple. It doesn't take a lot to work out whether or not Allah exists and all of these things. So Iman is fairly simple, right? As a binary function, are you a believer or not a believer? It's fairly simple in terms of what you need to know, and it's fairly simple whether or not you're a believer or not. You're either a believer or you're not, A or B. Islam is simple and is not simple. It's simple on a about doing things, but it's complex in terms of learning. So like if you get into the world of fiqh, you could, if you spent your whole lifetime doing fiqh, you would never finish, right? So, if you come into my room right here, I'm surrounded by, how does this work? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So work this out with me, Adam, okay? 15 times 5 times 10. What's that? 15 times 5 times 10. 750 volumes of fiqh, right? And that's a small library, okay? 750 volumes, right? You couldn't really read that in your lifetime, could you? Right, and that's a small section of fiqh, right? That's not everything. So fiqh is quite complex. It's very detailed. It takes a lot of research and all these kind of things. It takes a long time, right? You sometimes see my Q&A, it's like it says yes, no. And it's like that took me 3 hours to research. That one question. Yes, no. 2-letter answer with a reference. 3 hours, you know? So it's very complex in terms of on the high level. It's very simple in terms of do and don't. So Iman is academically simple and practically simple. Islam is practically simple, but academically complex, right? It's quite complex. There's a lot of variables, a lot of things to look at for the layman. Yeah, I'm not a scholar. I just want to ask somebody, is this halal, haram? Should I do it? Should I not? It's pretty simple. But for the scholar, it's quite complex. Then we have morals. The world of ihsan is academically very simple. The world of ihsan is academically very simple. It's not complex. One of my teachers, he said, Alhamdulillah, I've never studied a single book on morals, meaning like the academic side of it The academic side of it is very simple. The practical side of it is your whole lifetime. If you spend your whole lifetime working on your morals, you'll never finish. So the real effort in life is not in trying to prove that God exists or doesn't exist. And what does it mean by this? Theology is not a thing that we need to focus on. It's not very complex. It's pretty easy. Similarly, fiqh is academically complex, but practically very simple. Like you just do it as best as you can. It's not that complex. What is complex is morals, because morals is you. That's what you are. That's what defines every single thing. And morals determines what you do. So if you say this thing is haram, drinking beer is haram, insulting somebody is haram, not praying is haram, you're obliged to do this, you can't do this. Every single sin will stem from an internal sin. It is not possible for you to do a sin, and physical sin, a sin that we talk about in fiqh, in terms of Islam, without that stemming from a sin that stems in the field of ihsan. And vice versa, right? And vice versa. You cannot possibly do something moral without that stemming from something that's moral. It's not possible, right? You go make wudu with an intention of wudu. The only reason you're doing that is because of certain things inside you. So the heart, forgive the pun, of everything is the heart, right? If you fix your heart, you fix everything. If you don't fix your heart, you fix nothing, right? If you focus on your humility, everything else will fall into place, right? If you focus on fear of Allah, everything else will fit into place. Reliance on Allah, etc. So the internal fiqh, this is the life's mission. This is where we need to focus. This is when you say, for example, what does it mean to educate our children in Islam? It does not mean that they know a bunch of rules or that they know how to repeat sounds. That is not Islamic education. Islamic education is internal. Everything else is a tool, is a manifestation of something, right? So, as an educator, for example, this is what frequently happens in education, is they'll set learning goals that are not learning goals, right? So this person's trying to, say like, what's your goal for curriculum? What are you trying to do? They say, oh yeah, I want the students to be able to do this. Is that actually a goal? It's like, no, okay. Let's focus on actual goals, right? And then you think about tests to demonstrate that you've achieved those goals. So what are your learning objectives? How do you assess that? So morality is the actual learning objective. The test of it, the fact that you rely on Allah and you see Allah as the most important thing in your life is that when you're in a meeting, you can just say, excuse me, guys, I just need 5 minutes to pray. And you just get up and pray and you don't feel embarrassed. And you don't find it awkward because you don't see anything as greater than Allah. You're not intimidated or shy or embarrassed, right? The fact that you see that the akhirah is more important than the dunya is that you fast and you don't break your fast, right? That you do a contract that's halal and not haram, right? So the actual learning goals of your whole life are the internal things. Okay? That is where everything comes from. So fix the inside, you'll fix the outside naturally, right? Yes, you do need to know details. You are obliged to learn details. But the details themselves, or even applying the details themselves, will mean nothing until you fix the inside, right? إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the only person who's saved on Judgment Day is what? The person who has a qalb salim, has a pure heart. You don't have bad feelings towards other people. You don't have jealousy. You don't have doubts in Allah. You don't have Allah looks in your heart and it's just filled with Him. You don't have anything in your heart other than Allah. You're not interested in power. You're not interested in showing off. You're not interested in achievement. You're not interested in A or B or anything. Proving yourself or whatever it is. You just want to please Allah. So this is the big goal, right? And so many, many people, this is one of the problems of being a student of knowledge, right? Is that you know that, but the practical things that a student of knowledge usually does is they busy themselves with other things. So you spend 20,000 years doing Arabic and 20,000 years doing fiqh and 20,000 years looking at hadith. And then this person comes to the end of their life and they've forgotten the main thing in their whole life, which is how they are internally. They've forgotten everything, everything. They get married and they have a wonderful wedding and then they go on holiday or to Umrah and they do this. They do all these things, but they forget the whole point of marriage was just a exercise, a drill to show good character. That's all it was. To find out, it was an exercise to find out what was wrong with them and how they could change and how they could demonstrate good character in with respect to somebody else in a very vulnerable and sensitive and emotionally loaded situation. Right? War, hunger, wealth, success. These are just all excuses. These are all just drills. These are all just um, exercises to work on and demonstrate a pure heart. And what do? We lose the plot. We start thinking about the job in itself, the kids in and of themselves, the marriage in and of itself, fit in and of itself, right? That's not the point, right? So you lose the plot, right? So he's going to go through. So it says the morals. It says keeping the heart from vices. It says it is the duty for every Muslim likewise to keep the seven limbs from seven limbs from sin. So he says the vices of the heart. These include doubt, which is the doubt about God and is exalted, considering ourselves outside of the realm of God's plan or beyond His mercy. So I'm in control of things. And I've decided I'm going to Jannah and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, right? It's not like that. It's in Allah's decision and everything's in His plan. And if He wishes to punish you, He can. And if He wishes to send you astray, He can. So you're in a very, very difficult situation. You're in extreme, extreme need of Him. And so you really, really need to ask Him, please guide me, please guide me. You are not outside of His control and plan. Or beyond His mercy, I'm such a bad person. I've done so many bad things. I can't possibly change. I could never be one of those religious people, right? So the sin, there's somebody who, for example, I can never wear hijab. I can never pray on time. I'm just not one of these people. The sin of believing that they can never be like that is worse than the sin of doing what they're doing. Someone who's like, yeah, I mean, I know, yeah, I get it, but like that's just not me. I could never do that, right? So they're doubting or believing that Allah couldn't change them is worse than what they're doing. It's one thing to do the haram, it's the other thing to say that Allah could never change me, right? That's a big problem. Considering oneself superior to the other slaves of Allah because I'm more religious, because I'm more intelligent, because I've more money, because I have a better passport than them, because of my race, because of my looks, because of whatever it is. Right? Showing off, which has kind of different levels. There's, I guess you can kind of break into like 4 levels if you want. So there's showing off in worldly things, right? Like I want to show you how strong I am, show you how wealthy I am, show you how intelligent I am. That's one. So that means you did something with the intention of these things. So in reality, it's not just doing something, it's doing it with the intention, right? You drove your car past that person specifically. You brought up that topic specifically that they would ask about your grades and how intelligent you are, right? By the way, did I ever tell you that I'm a neuroscientist, throwing these things in, right? That's number one. Number two, an act of worship, right? So you start an act of worship or you change an act of worship in order for people to notice how beautiful your qira'ah is, how much you know about halal, haram, the fact that you're fasting, etc. Okay, so those are two. Then you have another one, which is retrospective riyah. Retrospective riyah is you did that act for the sake of Allah. You gave that charity for the sake of Allah. Okay. You were there at the San Diego in San Diego when those people attacked, right? May Allah reward the martyrs, right? And on camera, you were seen running to the scene as well. Okay, and nobody knew that. You were running to the scene like the other shuhada, right? You were there on camera, but you didn't make it and you didn't get shot and you didn't get harmed. But then later on, when people are going through the cameras, they find that you were doing the same thing. So you didn't do it. You did it for the sake of Allah. Say, Allah, I'm doing this for your sake. But later on, you were very happy that everybody noticed it. Right? So that's retrospective riyah. Right? So the sin is not for what you did. The sin is your attitude now. That you're very happy that people see that you did good deeds. Right? And then there's happy that they good deeds because I want them to follow. Right? Like, I want everybody to see that I'm doing this sunnah so that other follows me, as opposed to I'm trying to impress them. Like there's two different things. One is trying to change people's behavior. The one is trying to impress them, right? They're not the same. So retrospective riyah, right? Retrospective riyah. Um, um, and then you have what? Um, and then you have showing off to yourself. That's another type of riyah as well. So you're trying to you're just trying to be somebody. So are you trying to be somebody in Allah's eyes or just trying to be somebody? So this is very kind of subtle and weird, right? So like you're basically you're living it's kind of you can translate it as an ego trip. Like why do you fast Mondays and Thursdays? Oh, I do it, you know? Like why exactly do you fast Mondays, Thursdays? And you go into your heart to heart and you realize the motive is to keep up your self-image. It is not to please Allah. So you're showing off to yourself and you are trying to keep that self-image present. And if that self-image was lost, you'd be very sad, irrespective of whether Allah accepts you or rejects you. Right? I have to be the person who's in the front row of the prayer. Why? Because, that's the kind of person I am. So this person is really trying to get there. Why are you really trying to get to the front row? Right? And why are you actually running? Which you shouldn't run to the prayer, should you? Should be cool, calm, collected. Because for you, if you were in the second row, it would eat away at your standard of who you are. Right? Why are you reviewing Quran? Why do you want to memorize Quran? Because I want to be this person. I want to be a hafiz. Why do you want to be a hafiz? So that I'm a hafiz. Okay, but why? Why exactly? What's happening inside you? Are you trying to save yourself from hellfire? Are you trying to enter Jannah? Are you just trying to please Allah? Do you have this like amazing connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or is it just I want to achieve? Right? And so this is what you find with many people is that they come to the deen, they weren't religious before, and then they start becoming religious, but then it's a whole internal journey because in reality their motives are all messed up. They're not slaves of Allah, they're slaves of people or slaves of an image. There's a difference. There's a difference in somebody who's like, yeah, Allah, I just want to please you, whatever it is. I just want you to accept me, whatever it is. Right? If you accept me, and that means that I'm in a state where I'm not impressive to anybody or to myself, then so be it. And if you don't accept me, but I look impressive to the rest of the world or to myself, then I don't want to be that person. Right? So if you look at, for example, sin or lying, you know, for many religious people, they wouldn't want to lie, and then like, why would you want to lie? Oh, it'd be embarrassing. Oh, so you mind what people think about you. So yeah, okay, that's called riyah, right? That means you're not lying because you don't want people to see you as a liar, right? And then, or like, oh, but that would mean I'm not a religious person anymore. So that means you're worshipping your self-image. So that's not called ikhlas either. Okay, what's ikhlas then? Ikhlas is, yeah, Allah, I'm just here for you. If you want me to lie, if you would accept me as a liar, then I'll lie. And if you reject me as someone who speaks the truth, then I don't want to speak the truth. Like my only reason to be here, the only motive I have is, Ya Allah, I just want you to accept me. That's mukhlisina lahuddin, like that's ikhlas. That's being genuine. I just want Allah to be happy with me. That's the only thing that motivates me. right? So there's a big difference when you start looking inside you and you start looking at why you do things and how these things work and how you analyze things. There's a big difference between doing things purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala versus something else. And if you can imagine an analogy, um, there's this lady, for example, she is on Instagram, okay, and so she's talking about ch raising children, okay. So now she's talking hypothetically about raising children, what she should do for kids, what doesn't do for kids. And now she has this following, right? She's an influencer. Now she's being recorded talking to the kids. The way now you have this joint two motives or multiple motives of how she speaks to the kid. Do you speak to the kid to be nice to the kid? Do you speak to the kid to be nice to the kid for the sake of Allah? Or do you speak to the kid to be nice to the kid for the camera? Right? These are three different things, three different motives. Right? So the same thing. This guy's talking about, I don't know. This guy's talking about exercise. Exercise, and he's like, we do it for the sake of Allah. Exercise is important for the sake of Allah. So then is he now asking, but now when he exercises, is it for the sake of keeping up that image that he's created of himself? Is that for the sake that people next week see that he's done it, so they don't, when they're following him on Instagram or whatever it is, like, or is it just for the sake of Allah? Right? There's this big difference. And often it takes people like, it takes time to work these things out. And you have to go through life and you have to experience things and you have to sit with your emotions and ask why you're doing things, feelings that come up. You know what I'm saying? Let's say, for example, I'm shouting at my kids and then I realize the Zoom is on and then I feel embarrassed. So say, Farid Dingle, why do you feel embarrassed when you are heard shouting at your kids? Can't that be an act of worship to shout at your kids? I mean, isn't that like parenting? No, I felt embarrassed. Okay, why? Maybe the motive was wrong. Maybe you were angry for the sake of the nafs and not angry for the sake of Allah. Maybe you have this, you're attached to having an image. You want to be seen in a particular way. So you have a problem on either way. And you have to go through life and you start seeing these different things and you realize things are off. Right? But in most people, things are seriously, seriously off. They're not just a little bit off, they're like messed up, basically. But we try our best and we work. It's a journey. You don't say, oh, I'm a bad person inside. Yeah, that's part of the journey, is realizing that you're a bad person time, right? And starting again every single day. Scratch that, start again, right? So one of these things that people do is hold on to their own success story or hold on to their own failure story. I'm a failure in religion, therefore I'm going to do this. I'm a success story in religion, therefore I'm going to do this. So all of this is forms of minor shirk in reality. You do things for the sake of Allah, and He is the one who makes things happen. So every single day you say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, throw everything out. Your religiousness is not your God. Your irreligiousness is not your God. Your self-image is not your God. What other people think about you is you're not your God. There's no God but Allah. Your only motive, hope, fear, worry, concern is Allah. So you just throw everything out the window and say, Ya Allah, I'm just here for you to accept me. And then you start again. And things bit by bit kind of clear up a little bit. You start learning things and then you realize, oh, there's other issues. And you find this and you find that. And you start to have a clearer picture of what's going on. You have this kind of disease is big, that kind of disease is small, etc. Considering yourself superior to other people, right? So are you more religious than other people or less religious people, or are not even thinking about that? So somebody who's like, it's like, that's not even something you're thinking about, right? That's not even that's not a thought that should come to your head. Am I more religious than him or less religious than him? Right? That's a kind of a non-discussion for the person who has a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being proud of one's own obedience, same kind of thing, right? So there's a difference between thanking Allah for the good deed that you did that was very difficult, and you acknowledge that it was a very good deed and it was very difficult. So I'm not saying I didn't do a good deed, but I'm just looking at this good deed vis-a-vis it being a gift from Allah, not vis-a-vis my own achievement. Right? It wasn't like, well, look at that plane. You were the only person praying on that plane out of all of those Muslims who were going on Hajj, for crying out loud. They didn't pray, but you were the only person who prayed. It is true, and it was awkward, and it was difficult, and you did something. But you don't look at it in terms of yourself. You look at it in terms of a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so the more good deeds you do, the more gratitude you do, and the more you feel you need, and the more to Allah, the more humble you feel. So if your good deeds are making you more proud, then they're not good deeds, or at least the way you're looking at them is wrong. But if your good deeds are making you humble and you feel more broken and in more of a need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when you get up for Fajr and somebody else doesn't get up, you don't look around, oh, everyone else is irreligious. You say everyone else has not been blessed in the way that I've been blessed. So it makes you feel more humble. Spite towards other, right? Having ill will towards other. Envy towards others, right? You're envious that somebody is better looking, has more success in their family, has more money, is more intelligent, more abilities, right? Whatever it is. So these are all diseases. The meaning of hasad is dislike or an annoyance at the gifts God has given to another Muslim, wishing they would lose them, right? So when you hear somebody else, someone else is with their husband or wife, and you're like, oh man, aren't I married? Or why isn't my marriage like that? Why does he have a wife like that? Why does she have a husband like that? Or she not only has kids, but she's also a hafidha, and she's also doing her PhD. It's like I can hardly manage my own kids, let alone get a page of the Quran done, or even study or anything. I only finished high school, right? So this is arzaq. Some people, they can do lots of things, some people can't. Some people have lots of capabilities, some people can't. You know? So in school, you see some students, they can do anything. Athletes, right? There was one, I remember at school, there was these two kids. One of them was doing basketball practice, the other one was doing soccer practice. But the kid who does soccer practice, he's so good at sports in general that he's better at everybody at basketball. He just plays basketball at school, and that's enough. Whereas everyone else is going to play extra basketball. I remember I used to skateboard, at school. I started when I was like 11 or something like that. So I was like 11 and then 12 and then 13. When I was 13, skateboarding went viral. It went kind of crazy. So then there's all these kids, and this kid starts skateboarding for like 6 months and he's better than me immediately. Some people are like that, right? Like I've been doing it for 2 years. This person's been doing it for 6 months and they're way better. Among them also is persistence in sin. So you fall into sin, you make istighfar, you make a plan to get out of the situation, but you're not. You didn't leave the house. You didn't change your environment, you know. You didn't move positions, right? You're sitting in a situation, you saw something, and then you looked. There's a difference in seeing and looking, right? So then you looked, okay, and then you looked again, and then you looked again, looked again. Move, Habibi. Move. Go somewhere else. Make a plan, right? You always get into an argument at the same time of the month, the same time as the week, same time of the day. Make a plan to change things. I'm a stressed person. This time of the month, this time of the week, this time of the day, I get stressed. I don't want to get into another argument. Make a plan. Be responsible. Miserliness over things that Allah has made compulsory, right? So that, what does it mean? It means you don't care if your balance goes up or down. So with your balance in your bank account goes up or down, it doesn't change you, because like when your balance goes up, that's like the sun sets. That means pray. Pray Maghrib. When a balance goes down, that's like the sun rising. So the money going up or down, earning money or losing money. These are just different signs from Allah. Allah wants now you to do this type of ibadah or that type of ibadah. So you don't get sad. Like if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, I'm going to give you, um, you know, three signs. You don't care which sign he gives you. You just want to know what to do, right? So your money went up, money went down, whatever. Um, and very important when it comes to bills. People are like, oh my God, was that the PG&E bill? Was that that electricity bill? That is insane, right? That is insane. I don't want to pay that, and I'm angry that I have to pay that bill. So is a bill sunnah to pay or obligatory to pay? An electricity bill. Is it sunnah or is it obligatory? It's obligatory. So is it better than charity or less than charity if it's obligatory? But it's obligatory. The level of the fard is greater than the sunnah, right? So the fard is greater than the sunnah. So therefore, paying your electricity bill, like so now your electricity bill was three times the price. Like, oh my God, it's three times the price. Alhamdulillah, you're being forced to pay all this charity, which is the fard is higher than sunnah, right? Doing the fard is higher than the sunnah, right? So it's really, really good. And you're like, why is it so high? Right? And it's like, you know, your wife has to do dental work. And it's like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Yeah, but this is like, this is good. If there's no way out, then you're just spending lots of money on something that's really important, right? I have to go and fly for some reason. Oh, this is really expensive. So yeah, but and I have to borrow money for it. So yeah, you're being forced to give lots of charity. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Prophet said every single thing you put in your wife's mouth, right? The food, the obligatory that you support is charity of the highest level, right? So many people they don't have extra money to give charity, right? And then they resent the fact that they have these obligations to pay when they shouldn't resent the fact, should be very happy. These are obligations that you have to pay. I have to pay my rent. I have to pay buy food. You know, food prices are going up. This is things. The way they look at it is like, what is that? It's like you don't look at things in the right way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you means or asked you to do something or force you to do something in a particular situation. And this is of the highest level of charity, way higher than charity. And it's a really good thing, right? And so you're very happy to do it, right? And this is very, very important, particularly for women, right? Particularly for women, because men, right, by default, you have lots of expenses and you have to have some, you know, some excess, right? You have to have some savings because if a man's walking around with no savings ever, you're going to be in an awkward situation tomorrow. Something comes up, you're like, you keep having to borrow, keep having to borrow. For a woman, if she's married, by default, she doesn't need anything. She doesn't need to have savings. And there are all these people in the world who will have immediate needs, right? And so for a woman, women don't need to have savings by default, right? Unless they're planning for very specific things that say, for example, I'm scared that my kids are going to take interest loans for their education. So she's saving up for that. So for religious, she's saving up to put a down payment on a building as an orphanage. She's saving up to, for example, help her brother get married, right? There's some kind of Sharia goal, but like she just has money just there. Like you shouldn't do that, right? So Prophet like will say, well, I don't have any money, but like $5 in my bank account. So yeah, the Prophet said, save yourself from the hellfire even with half a date. So sister, if you have $5 in a bank account, go and spend it because you might die in 2 minutes. And that was the one thing that saved you. So by default, women should not have savings unless they're saving for some kind of religious goal, right? They don't need to have savings. With men, this guy literally has nothing, like zero. Like what's going to happen tomorrow? Oh, he has fixed his car. Like you have nothing. Every 2 minutes, you're asking people to borrow money. That's not very practical, right? Not very practical that every 2 minutes you're borrowing money from this person, borrowing money from that person. Eventually people are going to say no, right? So it's not a very useful thing, right? So for a man to have a little bit of kind of ability to do things is kind of like part of his responsibility. But for a woman, she's not responsible for anything, right? If she's married, not responsible. So miserliness over things that God has made compulsory for you. Bad thoughts about Allah and about other people, right? Allah only let me break my leg so that things get worse. Allah only led me through this divorce so that things should go down. Allah only made me do this sin so that I could do another sin. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let you do this sin so that you can repent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took you through this divorce to show you amazing things. Here we go. Just got text message. T-Mobile bill, right? Um, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala things only happen for good reasons. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on your side. Everything's really, really good. That's how it is, right? Religious people are good, and inshallah, they're going to do the best situation, as opposed to all Muslims are bad, and even the good Muslims, they're bad too, and everyone's a liar, and all the imams are cheats, and um 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 everything's really bad, and that person, he's just lying, and that imam, he's just show off. And and when she was telling me about what happened with her kids, she was just trying to show off. And when that guy is on the phone, he's probably talking to some random girl. It's like, why do you have bad thoughts about other people, right? Yes, some people do some bad things, but not everybody is always bad. So you always have negative thoughts about every single person. It's not halal, it's haram, right? So considering unimportant things which Allah has made important, or such as obedience, you know, like slaughtering a sheep. Bah, that's so funny. It's like, no, that's not funny. This is something sacred, right? You think like animal slaughter is something silly and backwards, like that, you have a problem, right? Well, the Quran isn't a big deal. وَقَلْقَلَ, iqra, atta, that's not very important. It's like, well, it is important. Allah's made it important. Sacred knowledge, right? The hellfire, garden, whatever is great in Allah's eyes, it has to be great in your eyes, right? And vice versa. Like, oh my God, the Lakers won. I don't care, right? Oh my God, did you know that so and so broke up with her boyfriend? And like, who? Like so and so, like, I don't even know who that person is. This is super famous actress. How do you not know about her? It's like, I don't care, because these things are insignificant. So it is part of our ibadah to be impressed and in awe of the things that Allah it has made us to be impressed by and should be in awe of, and to have disdain and not care, and to be unimpressed by things that don't matter, right? Where is the next World Cup? It doesn't matter. I don't care. It's not important, right? You know, there's a sale on this car. What, do you need that car? No. Are you going to buy that car? No. It's like, why are you telling me then? They just invented this new thing. Who cares? Right? So having this disdain for things that are worthless, this is part of our ibadah. It says all of these acts of disobedience are evil and will lead ones to destruction. In fact, some of them will lead them to entering a state of disbelief. So then virtues of the heart, these include belief in Allah, certainty, sincerity, as we mentioned, humility, right? And so there's a difference between humility and embarrassment, right? So everybody around you is really intelligent. You feel humble. That's wrong. Everybody around you is really skillful, and you're unskillful. So feeling dwarfed by other people. Everybody around you is really good looking, and you're like the ugly person around. Everybody around you has like amazing, CV. They've done amazing things in life, and you've done nothing. So you feel humble in that everybody else is better than you. That's wrong, right? To be self-inflated is wrong. To be humbled by other people is wrong. But rather, you're like Muhammad Ali, right? Humbled by Allah, proud in what Allah has given you, right? You're not intimidated by other people. So being intimidated by other people, by their looks, by their achievements, by their money, by the this, by the that, is not good. That's not Iman. Iman is La ilaha illallah, Allah dwarfs me. Jannah, Allah and his signs dwarf me, but I'm not dwarfed by other people. There are not other gods besides Allah to dwarf you, right? So that's very important. So you feel like, oh, I'm nothing compared to so and so. It's kind of a wrong way of looking at things. You say, I'm nothing compared to Allah, right? And so when people, for example, put you down, that's not good, right? That's not when you feel down because people put you down. That's actually a defect in you, not just in them, right? Or succumbing to being browbeaten, right? They can browbeat you and make you humble or make you submissive. That's not good. That's such a defect in you, not just them. They're doing something haram. To browbeat people is haram, right? But to succumb to that is also wrong because it means you're not looking at Allah, right? Respect for the Muslims and things that are sacred, generosity. I mean, you're very happy. If Allah wants me to spend that, I'll do it. No problem. You know, Allah wants you to spend all the money that you have, plus you're going to be in debt for the next 50 years. Does Allah want me to do this? Yes, I'm very happy to pay for it. Very happy to sign me up now, right? I don't have any problem with that, right? So, but generosity is not the same as giving, right? You might ask somebody, hey, can you lend me money? He says no. Or can you pay for this? Say no. Say why? Because Allah doesn't want me to give money to you. Allah wants to give me money to somebody else, right? Like you have the cash, but you're saving it for something else. So I tell my wife, say, hey, can you help me out with the bills? And she's like, no. I say, don't you work? Don't you have a job, make money? She says, yeah. So why can't you help with the bills? So I don't want to tell you. I say, oh, you're cheap. So, well, how do I know she's cheap? Maybe she has other things to spend her money on, you know? Maybe Allah does not want her to spend her money on me because there's other things that Allah wants her to spend her money on. So when you say, oh, you're cheap, you're not spending, brother, give. Allah will give you more. Yes, give, but you also have to withhold from the lesser priority for the greater priority, right? So generosity is one thing, is I'm happy to give all my money that I have and all my money I will ever have and all the time that I have and all the energy I will give it to Allah right now. But the issue, I'm not going to give it to you or to give it to this cause because I'm giving it to another cause, right? And a very important thing here is also not being over generous with your time when that takes away from other people. So because someone comes up to me and says, Sheikh, will you teach my kids? I say, sure, when I have time to teach, when I have time. Why? What do you mean when I have time? You should be generous, Fareed, with your time. I know. But if I give to you, then I'm taking away from somebody else. Right? So when generosity results in giving to one at the cost of somebody else. Right? And so everybody should be very careful with it, but particularly women, because the haqq over a woman from her husband is huge. So she gives to her children, and she gives to her sister, and she gives to her work, and she gives to the community. And then at the end of the list, if she has time, she'll give to the husband, even though he is the only person that has a right over her. The children do not have a right over her. The community does not have a right over her. The job does not have a right over her. So she's used her generosity in the wrong way, be it her physical, emotional, whatever it is, right? And the same thing for a man as well. Like, why is it if a sister called you at 11 o'clock, Sheikh Farid, you'd be like, sister, sure, how are you doing? I can help you with marriage advice and this and fit things, but your wife wants to talk to you? Oh, you don't have time, right? That's generosity in the wrong place, right? That's generosity in the wrong place. Some kid in a masjid asks you a question, you sit with him for 5 minutes and help him understand. He's like, oh, you Sheikh Farid, thank you for talking to my son. But when your own son wants to talk to you, you don't have time. That's generosity in the wrong place. That's not generosity. That's called something else, right? So part of generosity is to know who and what not to give away, who not to give to, and what not to give away, right? I need to sleep. If I don't sleep, I can't do my job. So, oh, I'm going to give this sleep in tahajjud or give this sleep in answering Q&A or give this. It's a wrong thing to do because you by giving you took away, so you can't do that. Having a good opinion of others, assuming the best of other people, honoring the rights and sacred rights of God, right? And so, for example, checking up on your kids, right? Hacking into your 15-year-old's phone and checking the history is not having having a bad opinion of other people. That's being responsible. There's a difference between assuming the worst of somebody and doing due diligence, right? I remember once I was teaching this girl. Okay, it was like basically one-on-one, and the door was open, so it was like a one-on-one class. And somebody told me, they said, "Did you know that the manager actually walked past the room a few times?" And I was like, "Okay." So is the manager coming to check on me because he thinks I'm going to say something inappropriate? Or is the manager doing his due diligence as a manager of an Islamic center? Like, yeah, if something happened, if there was flirting happening or inappropriate language or something else, then that's very dangerous, right? So his responsibility to do that. That's not a bad opinion. Got to be careful. Honoring the rights and sacred sites of God, thankfulness for the gifts of God, including every single blessing that other people have given you, even if they've wronged you 50,000 times. So your parents have wronged you, your wife wronged you, your husband wronged you, your kids wronged you, your community wronged you, but you don't thank the community, for example, for electricity or roads, or your parents for giving birth to you, or your dad for taking you to school once at least, your children for at least doing one thing for you, your wife at least the very least thing that she did. So the only thing your wife ever did was got pregnant and gave birth to your one child, and then she cheated on you, lied about you, spread rumors about you, and every single thing. Well, at least she gave birth to a child for you, right? Could you ever repay that back? You couldn't, right? So it's very important. People say, "I thank Allah, but I have bad feelings towards other people." That means you don't thank Allah, period. Right? Including obedience. Thank Allah for you're a lame Muslim. But you say, well, alhamdulillah, have you ever prayed on time? Yes. Thank Allah for that. Have you ever worn hijab in your life? Yes. Have you ever covered your awrah? Yes. Have you ever listened to the Quran, if not read it? Yes. Thank Allah for the good deeds that you did. Thank Allah for the good deeds you did. These are not small things. So don't label yourself as I'm a bad Muslim and then look at every single thing. There's the humility of looking yourself as nobody, but then there's the disdain for Allah's blessings. These are two separate things. Thank Allah for the good deeds that you did and see yourself as a lame individual. That's fine, right? But you don't discount the blessings that He gave you. Steadfastness in trials, sickness, tests, death of loved ones, loss of possessions, a rule of people, consistency in obedience, persistence, being the stick-to-itiveness to obey Allah, confidence about one's rizq. Whatever comes to me is going to come to me. Whatever isn't, it doesn't matter. Right? Dislike of the dunya, I don't care about things that I can't worship Allah through. Hostility towards the nafs, I don't identify with my ego. So therefore, if you insult me and say, Fareed, you're lazy, I will say, you're true. Say, Fareed, you're inconsiderate, it's true. You're fake, that's true, right? So the sign that you have a huge nafs is that if somebody insults you, you get personally offended. So being personally offended is actually a very useful tool. When people insult you, it's actually very useful because now you can tell, was I personally offended or was I upset that Allah has been disobeyed? They're two separate things, right? Your child says, "Mama, I hate you," and you're personally offended, versus you're trying to protect the child from learning bad habits and saying, "No, we don't say that to your mum because she did this," right? There's two different things, right? So if you could pay people to insult you, if that were halal, you should do it because it's very useful. Are you personally affected because of your nafs? I mean, you have a big ego, or is it that you're angry for the sake of Allah? Love of Allah, His Messenger, His companions, His family, the second generation of Muslims, the righteous. So that means you care about the tabi'een and the tabi'een more than you care about some actor or some whatever it is. Satisfaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're very happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dependence on Him, you don't care about anything else. You're not seeing anything else as a means to achieve any goal other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. And other acts of the heart that are obligatory. We're going to stop here, inshallah ta'ala. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.